This is Janet Kintz Early with JAK Consulting Services in Knoxville, Tennessee, and you are listening to the world's #1 pest control training podcast, the Pest Geek Podcast with Frank Hernandez.
Pull out your hose and grab your can. We're about to integrate another Pest Geek podcast. Hi, everybody. Frank Hernandez here, and welcome to the Pest Geek podcast, bringing you the latest information on pests, products, and politics from today's leading industry sources to help you start, manage, and grow your pest control business.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of the Pest Geek podcast. I am your host, Frank Hernandez, here every day discussing all things pest. And I want to remind everybody to join the Pest Geek Society. Join the revolution of what's happening in the pest control industry. Join us on Facebook, Pest Geek Podcast Listeners Group. We're also on Twitter. We're on YouTube, pestgeekpodcast.com. Join us. Join in on the conversation. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you need to be more successful. Contribute, engage. And now here's Jeff McGovern with today's topic.
Thank you, Frank. We have been talking quite a bit about different pest control concepts and service and such. And I think one of the things I want to touch on today to all you Pest Geek podcast listeners is in reference to commercial accounts. And when you are a small company, sometimes you feel intimidated about going after those commercial accounts, particularly if you're in an area that has a lot of national accounts, so to speak. In other words, chain restaurants and that kind of thing. And you say, well, I'm not going to call on those. They're serviced by the big boys. And I'm intimidated. I'm not going to get the service anyway, and this type of thing. But what I would encourage you to do is to make easy contact with these people. Because you know what? Even though it might be a chain restaurant, even though it might be a national account, in a lot of cases, you're going to find good old-fashioned local folks that own and work in those businesses, and they need just as much help as the mom-and-pop restaurant, grocery store, or other commercial account you might be servicing. So it's no different except for the name. Now, yes, sometimes it's a franchisee, but you know what? They're not necessarily bound into national account contracts, so to speak, in pest control, particularly if there have been failures in that service. Now, we all know, maybe don't talk about it very much, but we all know that in many cases, national accounts from large firms are bundle priced. They're group priced. And in many cases, if you were to actually sit down and chat with a technician that's servicing these national accounts from a larger firm, and they might be disappointed in what they're receiving as far as compensation. Because in a lot of cases, that type of pricing sort of is overall and an average. It's low. Somebody wanted to get the entire contract and take it over. And I've seen this happen time and time and time again. And the person that's actually hurt in the process is the technician. And the reality is, in all things pest control, the happiest individual in the process, as much as we would like to say it's the customer, actually has to be the technician performing the work. Because if you have a happy technician, you will have a very happy client that's treated well. If you have a disappointed technician that pulls up out in front of that facility and that lady or gentleman realizes there's no way I have time to do this properly, I'm going to have to cut corners and get out of here because bottom line is I got to feed a family. So at any rate, let's take a look at that commercial account. And we all have experienced restaurants. And, there's a lot of folks that say, I'm never servicing a restaurant again. And it's probably because of a whole load of misinformation. But let's take one restaurant. Walk into that restaurant, say it's a national chain or regional chain, and simply introduce yourself first of all. And let them know that you're interested in doing their pest control service. You know they're going to have one, but you're the one interested in doing the service. And you hopefully can get to the manager or, get to the owner of the business. And it's not as hard as you might think if you simply ask. You just have to walk in and do that. And of course, you don't want to approach them at a busy time. Obviously, you don't want to walk in there and make this commentary about noon, or certainly not during breakfast or during dinner. But in a lot of cases, these restaurants are open for lunch and dinner and not breakfast. So you can stop in mid-morning before, when things are getting warmed up for the day, and maybe the owner is just waiting for that rush. But they have time for you then. Or simply request to come back at a good time for them. Make the appointment then and there. Give them your card. It does not have to be complicated. I've done this and I've trained people to do this, and I've seen that a good, quiet, go in the business, introduce yourself presentation works very well sometimes. And you're not going to get it 100% of the time. So what? Go on to the next one, because you're going to get some no's. You've had sales training. You know this is going to happen. But the fact of the matter is, you simply want to get an appointment with this person. Now, once you sit down with them, you want to find out what's been done in the past. What are they dealing with? If you have the opportunity to make an assessment, it's really good to do that. And always remember to ask the question, particularly of what might be the lowest person on the totem pole in there. Understanding that even though somebody may be down on the totem pole, that does nothing to diminish their importance to the business. But I've found out reams of good information from ladies and gentlemen that are washing dishes, from ladies and gentlemen that are in charge of janitorial. They know everything about what goes on behind the scenes, and their information, with a simple question like, where was the last place you saw? And fill in the blank with regards to the pest, roach, rat, mouse, fly, ant, what have you, and simply have them take you to where begins that process. But once you've established what's going on and you're sitting there with that owner or with the manager in charge, hopefully the person that can make a decision to give you that account, you need to ask what's been done before and tell them, quite honestly, I need to review the records of your prior services because I need to understand what's happening here. You know what? In a lot of cases, you're going to find a failure of program. By going through the records, you'll probably find out why the program was failing. And I've done this with facilities, and I've laid out the service tickets, and I've gone through them. And the amazing thing is, I can begin to identify technicians individually by the amount of product they used. Maybe they used 3.5 ounces of the same thing every single month for the entire time that they were in there. And that's not the truth. And you also find out they're underreporting the situation that's really going on there. And then you find out that what's failing as a process is being repeated time and time again, even by different companies when one is fired and another one is hired. And if I remember correctly, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. It's not going to happen. So you have to back off and find out what really needs to be done, and the records are going to help you do that. Now, once you've gone through these records, start talking to the client about what their real needs are, because what you need to become is the individual that protects their brand name with regards to pests. And that brand name is the one that's on the business, if it's a national account or regional account. If you happen to go into a local facility, the brand name is their name. So you need to protect their brand because the amount of money available to do that is usually much larger than the small amount of money being paid to the bug guy. And also, be very, very honest with the individuals on how long this service process really needs to take. Because you may look at those service records and find out that people have been shooting in and out of there in 20 minutes or half an hour. And in your world, you're looking at this with your level of expertise and you're going, this is going to take a couple of hours a month to service. Well, for heaven's sakes, price it for 2 hours worth of work. And then be very honest with this individual as to what the labor time cost is. When you give them a price, what you want to talk about is, this is a 2 hour per month service. This is a 4 hour per month service. Our service rates are X. Now, generally on average for commercial rates, that might be $125 an hour. Maybe you're comfortable with 100, maybe you're comfortable with 85. That's fine if that fits your model. But for heaven's sakes, price that account for time. That's the big secret that companies that are successful have, is that they price it for time and they stick to it. Nothing is more frustrating for a general manager or owner of a restaurant to pay money for pest control and lock up for the night, leaving their pest control operator there, and then maybe they make a run down the street to the 24-hour grocery to get something for their family, and they come back and it's 20 minutes later and the bug truck is gone. Well, who can do anything at 20 minutes? You can't. You need to spend the time to do the job right, and that's the secret in pricing. Now, you want to make sure you document everything you do. The last thing you want to do is beat the living daylights out of the previous company doing the work and pointing out all of their failures. Because you know what? They already know they have a problem. They already know there's been failures. And if you see multiple pest control companies, one a year for the last 5 years, 10 years, what have you, they're constantly switching out. You know what? They're not stupid. They know there's been failures. So for you to sit there and beat up on your competition, well, frankly, it just makes you look bad. Ignore that. Take the high road and simply indicate, these are the things I'm going to do. These are the expectations you can have. Build in the follow-ups. Don't wait for them to call you back. Build it in up front. You might set up a forced monitoring program for roaches. Let them know the time schedule on that. Let them know that I'm going to follow up again in a week once we've done this preliminary work. Wrap your arms around them. Charge them appropriately. Show them how valuable you are to their business and proceed forward. You may even want to have a meeting with their employees, because those valuable individuals in their business can become the best partners you ever had. And you know what? Because you're showing that level of commitment and honesty and concern for their situation at work, you're going to have some of those folks that say, hey, I've got some things going on at my home. Can you help me with those? And you will build an entire family of satisfied clients, commercial and residential. And what you'll find is one leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. Because there's very, very few things as powerful in life as a good word from someone you know regarding someone else that provides a service that they can benefit from. So those are a few tips in a very brief period of time. I've spent a lot of years in this business, and yes, I've seen failures. But you know what? I've also seen tremendous successes with some very talented PMPs. And frankly, it doesn't matter what size company they come from, because the lifeblood of our industry is the ladies and gentlemen sitting behind the wheel of those route trucks. And if you're doing it right, and you're promoting who you are and what you do and your skill level, and you're honest and concerned about your clients, you're going to get the work. So go after it, find it, and you'll be successful. So with that, take care. Have a wonderful day. This is Jeff McGovern, the Pest Coach. And Frank, I'm going to turn it back to you.
We hope you have enjoyed this edition of the Pest Geek Podcast. Have a pestacular day.
Thank you for listening to the Pest Geek Podcast. If you have enjoyed the Pest Geek Podcast, please give us a rating, write a review, or subscribe to the channel. You can join the Pest Geek Society by visiting pestgeekpodcast.com. Thank you for listening. See you next time.